Today, as the trial of Tetsuya Yamagami, the man who shot and killed former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe back in July 2022, finally reaches its concluding hearings in the Nara District Court, it's hard not to feel a profound sense of gravity weighing over this entire proceedings. Because here we are, more than 3 years after that shocking moment when Abe was gunned down in broad daylight while giving a campaign speech, and the question on everyone's mind is what kind of sentence this man will receive, and more importantly, will the court take into account the extraordinarily painful upbringing that shaped him into someone capable of such a desperate act? Let's step back for a moment and remember how this all unfolded. On that fateful day in Nara, Abe was standing there, unprotected in many ways, delivering his speech when Yamagami approached from behind and fired 2 shots from a homemade gun, a weapon he built himself out of sheer determination, fueled by years of resentment and pain. The first shot missed, but the second struck Abe fatally, and in that instant, Japan lost one of its most influential leaders, a man who served as prime minister longer than anyone else in post-war history and reshaped the country's foreign policy and economy with his Abenomics vision. But this wasn't a random act of violence. Yamagami has been clear from the beginning. His target was Abe, not out of political ideology in the traditional sense, but because he saw Abe as deeply connected to the Unification Church, the group widely known in Japan as the Moonies, that he held responsible for destroying his family life. You see, Yamagami's mother became deeply involved with the church, donating massive amounts, over 100 million yen, that bankrupted the family and left Yamagami and his siblings in ruin. His father had died by suicide when he was young. His brother later took his own life, struggling with illness and the family's financial collapse, and Yamagami himself attempted suicide multiple times, feeling trapped in despair. He couldn't go to university, not because of lack of ability. He was smart enough to attend a good high school, but because the money was gone, swallowed by the church's relentless demands. And in court, Yamagami has described how this grudge built over decades. He originally wanted to target the church leaders, but they were unreachable, so he turned to Abe, whom he believed was one of the most influential figures promoting or at least linked to the organization through messages and appearances that the church used for legitimacy. And looking back, it's chilling how meticulously he planned it. He tested his homemade weapons, fired shots at other locations, even considered other methods before settling on that day in Nara. And when he was arrested right there at the scene, he didn't run. He confessed immediately, admitting everything. And throughout the trial, which started in late October this year, he has pleaded guilty to murder and the related charges, like violating gun laws and manufacturing explosives without contesting the facts. The real battle has been over the sentencing. Prosecutors are pushing hard for the harshest possible punishment, arguing that this was a premeditated assassination that shook the foundations of Japanese democracy, denying the people their leader through violence. And they point out that similar cases, like the killing of a mayor in Nagasaki years ago, initially brought a death sentence, though it was later reduced. And they insist that Yamadami's upbringing, while tragic, has no direct bearing on Abe, who wasn't personally responsible for the church's actions. On the other side, the defense has painted a heartbreaking picture of religious abuse, how Yamagami's life was derailed by his mother's devotion, how the family suffered neglect and financial devastation. And they've brought in witnesses, including Yamagami's mother, who testified and expressed remorse, though she still holds faith in the church. And even Yamagami himself took the stand multiple times, explaining his despair, his sense of crisis, that if he didn't act, the church would continue harming others through political connections. And in a poignant moment recently, he apologized directly to Abe's widow, Akie, saying he felt deeply sorry for the pain he caused her family, even though he harbored no personal grudge against them. He even called his actions a mistake, saying Abe should not have died this way. And it's moments like that which make this case so emotionally complex, because while no one disputes the severity of taking a life, especially a former prime minister, there is this undercurrent of sympathy in parts of Japanese society. Many see Yamagami not just as a killer, but a victim pushed to the edge by a controversial religious group that exploited his family. And in the aftermath of the assassination, the spotlight on the Unification Church intensified, leading to government investigations, lawsuits from former followers, and eventually a court order to dissolve the organization, something that might not have happened without this tragic event. So some quietly wonder if Yamagami's act inadvertently brought about positive change, exposing ties between politicians and the church that had been hidden for years and forcing reforms that protected others from similar fate. Public reaction has been divided. Polls show many Japanese feel sorrow for Abe and his family, but also empathy for second-generation believers like Yamagami, whose lives were overshadowed by parental devotion to such groups. And there have been petitions online calling for leniency, acknowledging his suffering, and arguing that the death penalty would be too severe for someone without prior criminal history, driven by personal revenge rather than terrorism. Globally, this case has drawn attention too, reminding the world how rare political violence is in Japan, a country with strict gun laws, where assassinations seemed like relics of the past. Yet here, a homemade weapon changed everything. And as we look to the future, the verdict is expected in January next year, and whatever the judges decide, be it death, life imprisonment, or something reduced considering mitigating factors, it will send a strong message about how Japan balances justice for heinous crimes with understanding the human stories behind them. Because in the end, this isn't just about punishing Yamagami. It's about grappling with the broader issues of religious influence, political connections, and the long-lasting scars of family trauma that can lead ordinary people to extraordinary acts of desperation. And as the court wraps up today with closing arguments from prosecution demanding severe punishment and defense pleading for mercy based on his background, we can't help but feel the weight of this moment. A nation still healing from the loss of Shinzo Abe, confronting the painful realities that led one man to pull the trigger and forever alter the course of history.